All right, I'm going to take a little bit of a risk here. I don't have as many slides as Dwayne usually brings, but I got 130. And I don't want to get through any of them. It says open discussion. You follow me with what I'm saying here? I'd like to talk about what matters to you here today. I'm an agronomist. I'm not a salesperson. I don't do any product sales. I work directly with 36 farms, right around 70 to 80,000 acres. Been doing that for 25 years. 16 different cash crops. Been in the soil health game, you could call it, for a long time. My growers have been doing no-till since before I was born, so that's nothing new to them. But we've been adding cover crops, crop diversity, rotations, all that kind of stuff. I have lots of pictures. This is 99% pictures up here. And I'm going to tell stories if you don't ask questions. Okay? And that's fine. And I can tell stories for the whole time. That's no big deal. But I think it might mean more to you if we talk about things that interest you. There's my office. I think it's the greatest office in the world. And you can razz me about Ford all you want. I don't really care. Ford, Chevy, Dodge. We have them all in the company. Doesn't matter. They all break down. They all run good, whatever. But that's my office. That's where I work. I've had internet in there for over 20 years. And it used to be really expensive to have internet in your pickup. Now it's really easy, okay? I run with a Scout, so that's why there's 2 four-wheelers on there. We go to the field, we go to the problems. I tell people I'm a plant doctor. I have the doctorate certificate from Nebraska, and that's what I do. I'm not a researcher, though. I'm a plant doctor. I go to the field, I do a checkup, I write a report and a prescription if there needs to be one. Make sense? I don't sell it. They go to their dealer after that. I don't sell the fertilizer, I don't sell the chemicals, none of that stuff. I sell the information. That's what I do. Okay? My slogan is the details matter. And so it's great that I'm, a long way from home. Actually, I'm straight north Aberdeen, 100 miles, Jamestown. That's where home is. And once you get past 100 miles, you can be an expert, right? Everybody knows that. So I'm clearly expert for you guys. I'm well over 100 miles. And you laugh. Why are you laughing? Because that's true, right? No, the thing is that you have to know what's going on, right? And it depends on where you're at, what you are, who you are, what problems you're facing, all that kind of stuff. Okay? Now, I like to tell this story. And maybe a few in the back can't see me, but I think it's pretty big, this basketball I'm carrying underneath my shirt here. Now, if I go to my doctor and he or she doesn't tell me I'm fat, I need a new doctor. My job is to tell you what is really going on in the field, not necessarily what you want to hear. Right? So I've got a question for you guys after what I just heard. How many guys are going to grow sunflowers in 23? How many guys are going to grow sunflowers in 23? Most of the room. Pardon my French, but holy shit. Yeah? Yeah. Okay. So as a plant doctor in Gettysburg, South Dakota, from North Dakota, I have failed my mission if we don't start talking with sunflowers. What are you going to do? You had a very good speaker who had very good science up here. He talked about it. 90% control is what's acceptable, right? And according to what he was saying, he was finding 50 plus per head in most fields, right? 90% control of 50 leaves how many? 5. What's the threshold again? 4 to 5. So you still haven't gone below your threshold. Are the insecticides working? Let's be honest, no, they're not, right? They're not working. What did he tell you that does work? You did have to after lunch. I mean, they were tired and we did feed them beef. Plant early. So everybody that raised their hand for 23 sunflowers is going to plant early, right? Boy, I think if you know, you're going to miss the bus. The guys I was sitting next to, he says, we get better yields when we plant later. I said, did you see 96% infection? I'm going to encourage you to plant early, take a risk on lower yields to try to miss this sunflower weevil. As an agronomist, if I worked for you, I would insist that you plant early and take a risk on your yields to miss the red seed weevil. What's the percentage that you're going to have a lot of seed weevil next year? 100%? At least 80. What's the chance you're going to have a really early frost and terminate your sunflowers? Less than 80. Yeah? Think about it that way. I'm a risk manager. That's what I try to help farmers do, is manage risk. And standing here listening to that today, I'm like, oh my God, this is the train coming to hit you head on. Manage your risk. Please. Even if you don't plant them all early, plant some early, right? Plant some different varieties. Try something different. Because spraying a sauna that's not killing them again and again isn't going to be enough. Spraying a sauna with the exponent that gives you 95% control at 100 seed weevils is still not enough, right? I'm not saying don't spray it. I'm saying it's still not enough. And I remember back in the days when we first had scab in wheat, Pioneer 2375. Anybody remember that variety? Loved it. Beautiful, tabletop. You could play pool on top of that wheat. It was all harvested at the same time. It flowered at the same time. And scab nailed it at the same time. I had growers that had bins full of wheat that they couldn't sell. I just heard about bins full of sunflowers that might not be for sale. That's my worry for you. And that's a really dark way to start a talk. I didn't want to do it that way, but I'd miss my calling if I didn't talk about manage your sunflowers better. Take the advice that you got and use it. Use it tomorrow, because you got a really high percentage chance of getting a very serious yield loss and making the problem even worse, because when you have thousands of seed weevils go in the ground and lay eggs for next year, you're going to have thousands coming back. Please take some of his advice. That's about as dark as I'm going to get now. This is my general practice. This is what I do. I am a soil health guy because I think the soil matters a lot. And I think if you're not paying attention to your soil, you're not doing a very good job farming. You can disagree with me, that's fine. But if it's not one of your first things you consider when you take a practice on, I think you're missing the boat. I know the soils in our neighborhood are pretty expensive. We're between $6,000 and $10,000 an acre for sale right now. So going and buying a new acre of land isn't really an option. So we like to take care of what we got. So I want to try by starting, what's the problem? What's going on? Where are we at? What am I facing? What am I trying to do? I don't just do soil health because it sounds good and fuzzy and rainbows and puppies are going to show up. I like to have a problem. I'm a problem solver. But I take it through the lens of how is this going to take and protect my farm and my soil. Then you set some goals. Like, what are you going to do? What is good enough? Is planting your sunflowers 2 weeks earlier a good goal to try to miss a seed weevil? That's up to you to decide. List your possible solutions. Make that plan. Then, did it work? Review that plan and see again, did it work? What's going to happen? Revise your plan and move forward from there. All right. This is the audience participation part. I didn't expect this room to be this big. Luckily, most of you guys are like me in their age. Oh, this breeds better than this. So those are all in blue. And they will jump to another part of my slide deck. I can talk about any one of those topics you want. I can talk about other topics that you want. But you're going to pick them. Usually, the first topic gets picked by somebody who's seen me before and knows that if they speak first, they get their topic picked. Yell it out.
It's one of the nutrients, but how do you set your nitrogen rates, like on corn?
How do I set my nitrogen rates on corn?
Follow Franzen, or
Do I follow Franzen or I do something different?
how do you variable rate, or how do you,
Yeah, so for my geography, again, right around Jamestown, North Dakota, we're starting with a soil test, previous crop history, what do we got? Usually following soybeans, so I'm figuring 30 pounds in right there. I normally have 20 pounds left over. That's been my soil test the last couple of years. I got 50 to start with, okay? I am going up to a max of 180 pounds of nitrogen, period. Most of the time I want to be 150 for my geography. And I don't care what your yield goal is. Does that make sense? I do more of a Franzen thing. It's more about return on your investment. And one of the reasons this is because in my geography, I'm getting about 15 inches of rain. I get a nice warm summer and I get good consistent rain. I get tons of mineralization. We can easily get 2.25 on dryland corn in my neighborhood with good weather. When you got good weather for corn, you got good weather for mineralization from your soils. I'm taking advantage of that because nitrogen doesn't stick. It's not going to stay there and bank up for the next year. So I'm trying to get my guys around 150 max as a field average. Now zone average is different because my zones are going to yield differently. But I still don't go over 180 total on the good zones, and I actually want to go less in those zones. Better soils, better organic matter, more mineralization. Usually top them out at 150. The zones that I feed the most are the yellow zones. The one with less organic matter, shallower soil, little better water than the reds. I'm feeding them right around 160, 170 units total in. My reds can be anywhere from good luck, you're on your own, to about 110, 120. And the good luck, you're on your own are the salts. The saline spots, the drowned out spots, the spots that maybe we're planting corn in there because it's just easier to drive through than lift up the corn planter. And I take arguments too. You can argue with me and tell me I'm dead wrong. That's fine. That's what I've been doing.
Can we do the salinity? I'm sorry.
Danny wants to see the salinity. And then I screwed it up. Now I got to go find it. I don't know why that didn't work. I spent a lot of time on this, Dan.
Well, I believe you.
It's supposed to jump to the saline spot. So now I got to go jump to it myself. Okay. This is the biggest, ugliest, nastiest saline field I got in the neighborhood. This is not mine. I don't work on it. This was from 3 or 4 years ago. This is soybean planted in it. It is currently now CRP, which was probably the smartest thing they could have done economically. But, oh, just lost this one. Can you hear me if I talk loud? The guy in the back's nodding his head. Okay, I'm going to call that okay. All right, so this is one of the worst saline fields in the neighborhood. Drone picture with that. All of the white is obviously nothing growing, not even kochia growing in those areas. Okay, you can see there's some yellow in there. Can you pick that up in this room? That is soybeans that suck. Those are 5 to 10 bushel soybeans. Okay, there's some light green in there. There may be 15 to 20. And then there's a few dark green spots in there that are probably 35, 40, which is about what we average. Okay, that's kind of normal. This whole field, well, first of all, almost half of it is there's nothing. So we're at a 20 bushel yield average. You add in the yellows, we're probably down to a 10. Why did you plant soybeans there is the question. Yeah? Why? So what's going on? It's literally just salt. Are we back? Yeah, thank you. And Dwayne's here, so I have to tell you that salts are fertilizer. Because he's dead right. He's dead right. They're lime, yeah. Mostly calcium, magnesium. We have a fair amount of sulfur in there. I got chloride in there. Those are all crop nutrients. They're just at really, really, really high levels. Enough that they kill the seed and the living plants. I'm in that 281 corridor. I think it's one of the worst areas for salinity. We have just enough rain to fill up all of our potholes and all of our aquifers, and we have just enough evaporation to bring more water up than down. Earlier, John was talking about where they have high rainfall and are leaching. I'm not in a leaching phase. I'm in a place where the water's going up. We're not using enough water to get it to go down. Soybeans use very little amounts of water until very late in the season, so they really don't work. So this is my ugly saline picture. If you have this whole thing and you want to talk to me specifically about saline, I'm going to ask you what's your number, what's the soil test from that, because white in the white doesn't tell me anything. I've seen stuff as white as this table come in at a 2.5 EC. I've seen the same color come in at a 14.5 EC. Okay, those are very different numbers. Okay, one you got a little bit of hope, and the other one is like don't even bother kind of thing. Okay, so there's along these lines that you need to know. And I don't mean from your general soil test of the whole field. I mean from that spot or those acres. In this field, you could do zones and you'd have a good number. One of the things I've seen with this is that I have an infield meter, and within 1 foot, 12 inches from one to the other, it can be twice as much based on the way it evaporated in there. So white doesn't tell me a whole lot, but as long as you got an average number, I can tell you something. If you're over 2, you shouldn't plant corn or soybean on that acre, period, or dry bean. It's that simple. They won't grow worth a darn, if they grow at all. The most tolerant crops are going to be sunflower and barley, and canola is a strong third in there, if you can make it grow. But again, understanding that it's already 3 feet behind where it should be. It's already growing in a really stressed environment. But what we're doing up there is we're changing the shapes of our fields. I'm in the prairie pothole country, and none of my fields are square anyway. But they definitely don't have to be square. So we're changing the shape of our fields. In this situation, we got corn here that got smoked with Goss's wilt. That was a bad year for that variety. We got soybeans over here, and then we got barley planted around all the saline areas where they're really bad. We just said, screw it, we're not going to put soybeans in there. Why? Because they're going to die. So when you plant soybeans in there, it's negative. Well, how much does it cost you to plant soybeans? It's negative whatever that number is. Right? It's that simple. And I tell people this is like, so you got that acre, you're renting this half section from whoever. You can't not rent those acres that are planted to barley, right? You got to rent them. That's like having the nephew at the farm. He's got to work for you for the farm because the sister's done with his ass. He's either going to you or the boys' ranch, one of the two. Right? Are you going to put him in the planter? God, no. I hope not. Not even to drive it around the yard, right? You don't trust him with that. Where do you put him? On the lawnmower. Behind the broom. Behind the one-wheel truck, right? The wagon, the wheelbarrow, that's where you put him. Give him a job he can do. Yeah, the manure spreader. At least he's doing something. Okay, doing something that he can't hurt you with, right? That's the idea here. This is the same idea. If those acres are going to be negative, whatever it costs you to plant them, don't plant them. We planted barley in these acres in June. Anybody here grow barley? Is June a good time to plant anything other than sunflowers? No. Typically you want to plant barley early. Well, that's a stupid idea. You're planting barley late. Well, no, I'm not planting soybeans, and I'm planting barley as soon as we can get in there. Because it's usually really, really wet and really, really muddy and really, really saline. Barley's the toughest thing I got. It's also one of the cheapest things I've got. Plus, as Dr. Beck will tell you, we got lots of fertilizer in here. I didn't put any fertilizer on this. The soil test had us over 100 pounds of nitrogen per acre. We put in a high rate of barley, and we let it grow. It competed with the kochia, and it gave us about 30 bushel an acre. Well, you ain't making any money in that. I'm making a hell of a lot more money than I did at negative $250 an acre in soybeans. So that's the idea. Oh, by the way, what does that do to your proven yield and your crop insurance number when you take those zeros off the map? It takes about 3 years to really pop that number. Got a thumbs up here. He's like, that'll go up. Yeah, absolutely. It takes about 3 years of doing this. And if you don't grow barley, do you care what your proven barley yield is? No. You know what this is if it's not barley? It looks like these little streaks here. Do you see these little streaks here? That's not soybean. In my territory, that's kochia. Though these are still saline, it just was one of those things like he didn't want to take that area out of production with the soybeans. He just planted through it. It was just in a weird spot. Where the soybeans won't grow, I call it a kochia preserve. It's the best damn place for kochia to grow. It's in the middle of a field. There's no competition. All kinds of water, all kinds of salts. You can spray whatever you want on it, and kochia laughs at you anymore, so I don't really care about that either. But the barley competed with it. And then, because these were dicamba beans at the time, we were able to spray over that border. Because dicamba is labeled on barley. So we didn't have a border effect in there. Same thing with true of the corn. Not the same rate of dicamba now, but I was able to spray those borders, so we had some weed control across that. That's how we're trying to manage this. Then we're following this up with a cover crop in that barley acre. Typically cereal rye has been the one we've been going to because we can plant it late, it'll grow, it'll be there next year. Then it'll grow next year. If this is underwater or this is really something we don't want to get into, we let the rye grow, let it be. If you really wanted to plant into it, you could plant into it and spray the rye off. Make sense? Now I wonder how many of my, this is another way that we've done this. This is drilled soybeans. Front tank, the big tank has got soybeans in it. The back tank has got barley in it. You can build a precision map. I can build you a precision map for $2 an acre, or you can just turn the switch on and turn one switch on and one switch off. Make sure you give yourself lead time so you don't have a bunch of skips. So when you're going into the saline spot, you plant the barley, and outside of that, you plant the soybeans, and you take advantage of the good ground. My grower didn't turn the soybeans off because they might grow. You never know. No, we do know, Aaron. We've done this for 10 years in a row, and they haven't grown. We do know. He just couldn't push the button. But at least he turned the other one on. Right? This is a really dark picture because it was a really cloudy day, but I love this one because it's just this island of barley in the middle of a cornfield. And we were able to spray a lot of herbicides right up and around this and not have any problems. We sprayed the barley first. We sprayed it with a wide match, which is labeled on both barley and corn. Then after that, we went with our regular corn herbicide, remixed the tank, and went. So we didn't have those little gaps in between where the weeds would get at us. Harvested the barley, turned around, planted a cover crop, and he's been doing that ever since. You know what you do with the really bad saline areas? You keep planting them to barley because nothing else will grow. That other one, where is it? Here, that spot has been barley for 6 years. Is that good IPM? I don't know. We've been holding the kochia back. It's the only thing that'll grow there.
Can I ask, is your EC levels going down in those areas?
She asked if the EC levels are going down. The answer is no. No, it's a good question. The answer is no because I'm not affecting enough water. I'm not moving enough water through that system. We're just not. What we're doing is we're keeping it from spreading. We're doing that. What those areas should be is grass waterways, permanent vegetation, all that kind of stuff, or a 7-year rotation where you're talking 3 years annual crops, 4 years of perennial vegetation. That would be something to do. I haven't gotten that grower that far yet. Okay, I haven't. He's mulling some of this over, but he hasn't gone that far yet. Yeah, and the shapes of them vary. And based on the different crops that he's planting, and some years he doesn't listen and he plants through it and the corn looks pretty good and we spray the barley out and it turns into 50 bushel corn and we should have left the barley, but I mean, whatever. He's got options at least, that's the big thing. This is what you're talking here. This is, the inside ring is grass. The outside ring is alfalfa. Then outside of that, we're growing whatever we want to grow. And the alfalfa is a dam. It's a water use monster in my neighborhood. I love alfalfa as a crop. I think it's a great cash crop. I wish more people would grow it. especially my area. But it's a dam, uses a ton of water. What I don't like about the grass / CRP in the inside is we really don't manage it that often. He did cut it this year, but we typically don't cut it, so then it just grows up for a few weeks, a month or two, and then it dies off and it quits using water, right? That's the problem with CRP, it quits using water. The alfalfa, we cut it, then it uses water, and we cut it and it uses water, and we cut it and it uses water. And inside, the alfalfa won't grow, it's too saline. We're hoping over time we can move that alfalfa further in, but it hasn't worked as well we want it to.
Is it salt tolerant?
Is it a salt tolerant alfalfa? I have both, and I haven't seen the big difference.
Okay.
Once it's established, I think they're pretty similar. When they're little, I think there's a difference. But I would say that it's one of those things like, I'm 5'9", I'm about 3 inches taller than my wife, but I'm not tall. I'm taller. Okay, so I think the saline alfalfa is more tolerant, but it's not tolerant like barley, or it's not along the same lines. And then we follow this stuff with a cover crop. The best saline cover crop mix I can find, which is usually the cheapest, that'll grow the longest. So cereal rye is not necessarily really saline tolerant, but it's pretty decent. And at the end of the year, where we've had more rain than less evaporation, we tend to dilute the salts a little bit. So I get better stands of the cereal rye at the end of the year. I usually mix it with some radishes or some turnips or something like that, just to have a little diversity in there. Try to poke a few holes, because a lot of this saline ground doesn't drain where the darn, so we're trying to get more of that in there. You want to get structure, because I need drainage. I need water to move through the profile. So the roots are part of what's trying to help us build structure. This is how if I want to look at your soil health, I don't send a test to the lab. I take a shovel and I dig a hole. This is the first thing I'm looking for. Chunks. Not flour, not fluffy. I want chunks. I want Lego blocks. I want you to think Lego blocks. I want you to think about walking around when your kids have spilled the Lego blocks in the living room. How that sucks to step on a Lego block. Well, that structure helps hold your soil up. Okay? And there's room between those blocks for water to infiltrate. So that's a real goal for me, is to have good structure. Now I'm back to where my links aren't going to work now, Dan.
No, it's good. Enjoy that.
The compaction one. Let's see if the link works, but I got a feeling none of them are going to work. Nope. That's what happens when you do things at 11 o'clock at night. There you go. This works too. It's just not as cool. Okay, so these are actually two different photos. The line is right here. There's a photo on this side and a photo on this side. They're two different ones. This is on Ontario, Canada. This is in Jamestown, North Dakota. And that's the same depth. Anybody want to know why it's the same depth when we're several thousand miles difference? Is it a soil thing? No way, right? It's different soils. Tillage, thank you. Same tillage machine. At the same depth in two wet conditions. That's what caused this compaction. And these are bricks, folks. Like, I couldn't chuck them with that soil knife that I have. I had to find the crack and pop them loose. Right below, yeah, it's silty clay. They're both silty clays. They're very different silty clays, but they're kind of in that silty clay. Well, silty clay loam is what I got. They got more of a silty clay. Now this is all, these are both in Jamestown now. This is the same field. Right below this is just mud. And what had happened is we were late. Preventive planting was right around the corner. And he's like, I got to dry that field out somehow. And he went in there with that, yeah, the Pro, I can't even hardly say it, the Pro-Till. That's the one machine I have no use for. And I did say one, like I can see uses for other things. Like a plow is a really nice yard ornament, yeah, and things like that. But I have no use for this machine because it destroys all of your soil structure in one pass. It's very efficient at doing that. It does it at the same depth. And what happened is he went in there and he dried this out. It got really sunny and really warm. And it dried out really fast with the wind, turned it into bricks, because that's what you do. You take clay, you squish it together, and you make bricks. Below that, it's sealed off the water, and we had absolute mud underneath of that. But that's not the only way to make compaction. Nobody in this room knows what that's from, right? You don't have any potholes around here, do you? Any wet spots to go around? How many times do you drive over those when you go around and around and around and around and around? How many headlands do you put on them things? How many tire tracks are in there? Think that's compaction? That's better than them little grates they grind in the road. Okay. You guys don't have this problem either. That's where she got a little squirrely. But you had enough horsepower to get through it. No, I'm not even blaming the farmer, right? Because here I am on one side. Dude, you got to get that field sprayed. It's got to happen now. The weeds are getting big. It's not going to work. He's like, the weather sucks. I'm like, I don't care. I'm complicit in this one. I'm part of the problem here, right? So this is part of the deal. It still is a problem. It still is a thing. And this whole answer of don't go out in the field when it's too wet isn't a really good answer. It's just a terrible answer. Sometimes you can do that. Most of the time you can't. This is my solution for compaction. Not that plant particular, but the roots. That's a corn plant. But that's the plan, is roots, root growth, lots of root growth, fibrous root growth, deep root growth. And try not to screw it up. That's not a really good answer. But I go back to the cover crops again because I can grow more roots more often, right? And get out there. The other thing I'm trying to convince my growers to do more of is to have something to drive on. We're green planting soybeans in this one. I don't always plant green, but I really like planting soybeans into some kind of rye, whether it was killed off rye, whether it's green rye, whatever. And you see, this is actually muddy. I actually just followed him through a water spot that he shouldn't have drove through. He planted through it anyway. And he's not full of mud on the tires. His discs aren't mudded up. He's not balled up. It's long-term no-till, but it still could have mudded up pretty easy on him. But they're really quiet. Either they're sleeping now, after the sunflower talk, have I seen rye affect yield on soybeans? I have seen rye hurt us 1 out of 17 years trying this on soybeans, and we were stupid dry and we couldn't get planted through the rye. The rye used way too much water and we couldn't even get the drill in the ground. That was the year that hurt us. We had to wait and come back later and it definitely hurt us. With it in the soybeans, at the same time, I have seen the soybeans stunted, I've seen them yellow, but I haven't really seen significant yield loss. As long as we get enough moisture, it seems like it works. Even in the last couple of years where we've had 90 some days at the end of the year where it doesn't really rain, part of what that rye is doing is like it's using a lot of surface moisture, but it's really preventing a lot of evaporation. So I think there's a lot of water left underneath of that. That's been part of our saving grace. And for some reason, rye and soybeans seem to get along really well. Corn, I have not had that kind of luck. 17 years of trials on corn, we've been hurt 15. I got one guy that can do it. I have no idea how, but he doesn't get hurt that bad. He also doesn't have 200 bushel yield corn. He's in that 120, 140. So maybe there's something to that.
What about sunflowers?
Sunflowers, I think it will work great, but I don't know. I think sunflowers would do that really well because they don't need a whole lot of moisture. If you can get them planted into that, I think it would be brilliant. I think you'd have some of your best weed control ever. So this is the main reason I'm using the rye is for weed control. That's the main reason. And we're getting good weed control in my neighborhood at about 15 pounds per acre of rye. And if you're worried about your sunflower is coming up in and through that, kill your rye 2 weeks earlier. Kill it off a little earlier. And we're doing that with the full pre-emerge. So we'll go out there, we'll plant soybeans, we're coming in with our full dinger pre-emerge, glyphosate, whatever lay down herbicides we're using, clean it up. And in sunflowers, you've got a backup plan. As long as your rye didn't go to seed and start heading out, you've got some clethodim, some other weed control tools. But I would definitely lay down whatever you're laying down anyway. If you're laying down broadax or whatever you're doing, lay that down with a heavy dose of Roundup. Maybe do that a week before you plant your sunflowers and get in there. I just told you to plant your sunflowers early, so do it right after you plant them. I think it would work. Don't go plant 10,000 acres because I said that. Because I'm in North Dakota, dude. You call, I ain't picking up. But there's something to try, okay? It's definitely something to try. What I tell people, if I got something new and it seems weird and you're not ready for it, 2 acres or 20 acres, not 200 or 2,000. Keep your mistakes small. Keep them off the main road. I mean, you know this. Come on. Do you guys like this kind of thing where you can pick your story? Is this okay? You're not sleeping yet. I don't see too many cell phones. That's pretty good. What's the next one? Somebody in the back. You.
What's your own personal theory on why weevil resistance hasn't crossed into North Dakota yet?
What's my personal theory on why weevil resistance hasn't crossed into North Dakota yet? Background. I have 2 sunflower growers. Last year I had 6 fields. Okay? You need to know that. I'm definitely not a sunflower expert. Okay. We have been planting sunflowers early, me and my colleagues, because blackbirds kick our tail. They flip and destroy us. And if we can get the sunflowers off in early October, we're ahead of the blackbirds. So we've been taking a frost risk for years. First week of May. I want my sunflowers in by the 10th of May if possible. And I know that we're taking a yield hit on that. But it's nothing compared to the yield hit we get on the blackbirds. And to be quite honest with you, last year I couldn't find red sea weevil in my 6 fields in Stutzman County, North Dakota. I think the planting date has a lot to do with it. There's research from the 80s that backs it up. There's research from last year that backs it up. I think there's a lot to do with that. It's based on the emergence timing of your weevil. It's missing its food source. Take that to heart. That's not just 1 year's worth of data that was shown in the 80s. I think that's part of what's helping us. I think you should use that in your management plan to plant some stuff early. Not all of it, maybe, but definitely plant some fields early. I can keep going. There's lots of stories. George.
What's the weeds and then run this morning, split pre-emerge like on sunflowers, like 30 green. Heavier right away on the raised or
What weeds? Kochia, I would double down early. I'd go after kochia early. My experience, my kochia is mostly early and then stupid late. I have 2 flushes. Kochia actually used to be a medium emergence weed when I first started. It wasn't the first one up. Okay, but I will go to the weeds. And again, I know this isn't going to work, but I just got to try it. Where are they at? They're not even on there. Well, geez, this guy must have been drinking last night. I don't know. You're the local expert, boss. Can you get it done? Can you get the backup plan done? That's the first question I have. The authority is your horsepower. Okay? That's your horsepower. And I don't know that it's labeled post. The Zidua
like right after planting, just heat it up some more.
You're not planting early. You're not listening to me. Anyway, I would come in with a burn down, maybe a sharpen or something that's working on your kochia. Now, we've got resistance to sharpen in North Dakota. I don't know if you do. And gramoxone. So that'll roll south, by the way. You'll inherit that from us. But I would definitely get that authority down before your kochia comes up because that's the only way that it works, right? So I double down early. But you could go 7 and follow by 2. I just don't know that 2 is going to do a whole lot other than carry you an extra week or so. And you got to get the rain, right? Nice thing about sulfentrazone is it's going to lay there and wait for the rain. Okay. These are weeds that I have that are weird. This is kochia in North Dakota on March 26th. Above frozen ground. The top 2 inches was thawed and the kochia was growing on the top. It was holding down the erosion. That was good. This is biennial wormwood. This is common ragweed. This is mare's tail. This is water hemp. This is water pod, nightshade, and redroot pigweed. All of these are major weeds of concern. And what I love talking to weed scientists is like, okay, I got a water hemp problem. They'll give you 2 or 3 herbicides. Say, okay, well, I got a mare's tail problem. They give you 2 or 3 herbicides. I said, well, I got a kochia problem. They give you 2 or 3 herbicides. I said, oh, by the way, they're all in the same field. That's the problem, right? So if you want to do multiple modes of action of herbicides on multiple resistant weeds, you may be looking at 6 or 7-way tank mixes at $150 to $200 an acre. Does that make economic sense? Not in the slightest. And I'm going to tell you, herbicides are dead. We just don't know it yet. I'm not saying we're going to quit using them, but they're not your main tool anymore, boys. Your main tool is crop rotation and diversity and changing the game on them. That's your main tool. Kochia don't care. Kochia is a honey badger of weeds. It don't care. That is the top of a gravel pile. That stuff's 4 feet high. It don't care. And these are the places that are killing us. This is the Richland County NDSU test plot. And that's water hemp. Yeah, I don't work for them. I can say whatever I want to. That's water hemp. That's enough water hemp to seed down the rest of the quarter. Now this is a few years ago. This is not Joe Eichley's fault. But this is what's happening. This is a barley field. Well, I should say this is a barley cover crop in a kochia field. This is what happens when you just say, I'm just going to spray it till it dies. This is one of my growers. He picked up this land, pretty cheap rent, never talked to me about it. I've been driving by it for years. And I know that the guy who farmed it before planted soybeans. Then the next year he planted soybean. Then he planted soybean. Anybody guess what he planted next year? Soybean, there you go. You guys are catching on. When we took this field over, the guy, that 4th year, he harvested about 27 acres out of 140. Because that's all he could chew through with the combine. My grower is convinced he's a better farmer. That guy's a shit farmer, obviously. I'm better than that. Has nothing to do with the weeds. I said, Mr. Farmer, you're going to plant barley for a while. And we're going to try to kill every kochia we can. And that first year, we actually had him go out there with a machine to cut down, mow up that kochia to try to get all the seed laying on top to try to get as much to grow next year as possible. Because I know this field had almost never seen starine. It had almost never seen starine, and that's pretty effective weed control. We planted barley early, and we hit it twice with starine that year. We got 90% control, but 90% control of 10 billion is not enough. You find that out pretty fast. We harvested the barley early, and we got it off before that late kochia was actually going to seed. Then we went to corn, which was probably not a great idea. It wasn't my idea, but it's what he wanted to do. We had good herbicide options in corn. We didn't have enough, because 90% control of holy shit, still holy shit. Pardon my French. I'm going to say it like I think it is, okay? But we were getting ahead of it. And then he let the quarter go, because that was the smart thing to do. I like to finish projects, but I never got to finish this one. You guys have water hemp over here yet? Do you have this kind of water hemp over here yet? I'd like to say I'm standing eyeball to eyeball with it, but I'm not. It's looking down on me. Okay? Behind me, the wheat field's pretty clean. You know, it's pretty good. But this water hemp's not very old. That's the real nuts of the deal here. This water hemp's not very old. It's probably 6 weeks old. And it's in a drainage way, in a waterway. We came in and mowed it down before it went to seed, but it doesn't kill it. It just gets it to restart. Yeah, and I've heard this explained before to me. Well, no weed is resistant to tillage. And I call bullshit on that one. That's kochia holding the soil together after hardcore tillage. That's water hemp laughing at it. And this isn't anything new. Like, the best way to move quackgrass around was to put it on a digger and drag it around the field. You guys know that. Who didn't? That's what I did as a kid. That was my job, was to move quackgrass. Replanting quackgrass. Okay, so the push nowadays is like, well, we got to get back to more tillage. And I would ask you, when are you going to do tillage that kills water hemp? It's not up in April, is it? That's when guys are doing tillage. Can you kill something that's not growing yet? Not really. My water hemp doesn't come up till the end of May, early June. And you can say, well, I'm going to go back to cultivating. I don't think anybody wants to do that. You still got to kill stuff in a row. And what are you going to do in July? Watch it grow? So that's what we're doing. I actually have an idea for this, and it's working. This is where I was telling you guys I'm using cereal rye as a weed control tool more than anything. This was an accident. This is a really old picture. This is 2007 or 2008. We were doing it for saline management. Stop planting that acre that the soybeans don't grow in that whole field, right? Plant the rye into that fall because it was easy. There was no soybeans. You just plant where the soybeans didn't grow. Then guess what he planted next year? Soybeans. Okay, well, this is a corner here. You can see the telephone poles. This is actually right next to the road, so it wasn't the full sprayer width. So he come up, he turned around, he left, went back the other way. He was going to come back, fold up, spray this little patch, and that was fine, right? That was the plan with the pre-emerge. Pre-emerge actually worked. You can see he never came back. Now, does kochia grow in a line like that normally? Does it? That's pretty cool, isn't it? Anybody get 95% weed control on kochia with $5? We did. $5 worth of rye. Now, it didn't kill all of it. There's still kochia in there. There's a few little ones here, but they're 2 inches tall. They're not 12 inches tall. And when you do this right, it looks like this. I'm telling you, this is beautiful. Anybody garden? Don't be shy. Gardening is a great thing. Anybody grow trees? Ever heard of mulch? What's that look like? What's mulch for? Conserve moisture, protect your plants from weeds. That's what we're getting out of the rye. So even after the rye is dead, it is really helping us a lot.
Lee, you were talking about your rye and 15 pounds. Is that just before beans, or is that all the time? Or?
The question is, we're talking about rye and 15 pounds. That's a security blanket a lot of my guys are using. Number one, it keeps it cheap, makes it easy, goes a long way before they refill the drill. It seems to be enough to give us some weed control. It's not enough to give us water management. It's not enough to give us good trafficability. And for our soils, we need to be 30 to 50 pounds to get better water management and better trafficability. And I think if you had bad water, I could justify up to 100 pounds per acre of rye, easy. And we've done some variable rate stuff. We haven't been able to make it work the way we want it to. So we've done 15, 30, and 80 pounds of rye across the field where we wanted to do those things. It just doesn't seem like it comes the way we want it to. And that's probably my fault not making right maps, honestly. It just seems like where the rye is going to grow, it's going to grow. And 15 pounds is almost equal to 30 if it gets a good start in the fall. If you're planting it really, really late and it doesn't get started, you need to up your rate. And it's still not going to be the same as if you planted early. This is what I like. This is mid-season. This is what these soybeans look like mid-season. Is that one less scratchy? How about?
Yeah, turn it on.
Yeah, that's operator error. How about now? Hello? Test 1, 2, 3. Hello?
I don't know what's going on.
That's all right.
for that one back.
How about now? Okay, well, I'm gonna stick with this one. These soybeans are shorter. Their internode spacing is really, really small, about 2 to 3 inches. They are yellow, and you can see that from the picture. This is one of those things where he had done a quarter of rye, and he had just a couple passes left. But the most beautiful thing in the world ever happened. He thought he'd ran out of rye and left the field, got out of the field, was a mile or two away, looks in the tank, goes, "Grr, there's a little bit of rye left." He swings into another quarter and he plants those 2 passes out. So guess what I had? The first field I had to skip about 2 passes wide. Brilliant. The second field I had a 2-pass rye. So now we had on-off in 2 different fields within a mile of each other. It was brilliant. We could see it all year. It was obvious all year. The soybeans were shorter, they were stunted, they were a little bit yellow. Okay? All along. You're gonna get it yet. Hello? Ha! See, he figured it out. Okay, so this happened. We saw it all year long, and he's like, man, that's bad news. I can't take a yield hit on my soybeans for this rye. This sucks. We went out and we counted pods. Counting pods is a waste of time. Soybeans. Because this one's got 100 and this one's got 7. And you can find that in every field. We went in there with the weigh wagon, and it was a half bushel difference, which to me is no difference. He had a lot smaller plant with a lot more pods on it, and he yielded the same. 1 year, but we've been doing this again and again and again, and I don't think we're seeing yield losses. But we're seeing really good weed control. I'm seeing kochia control. Some of the best kochia control I got. Right now, my best pre-emerge for kochia is cereal rye and soybeans. Second best is sulfentrazone. It's decent on common ragweed. It's been pretty good on water hemp because of the mulch effect. Not so much a direct competition, but the mulching effect. That's what I think.
What was the previous crop?
Previous crop on this one was wheat. So the rye got in on a good time frame. He got it in into August. I like to have my stuff done by Labor Day. I think you guys have got probably till the 20th of September to get a really good rye growth, maybe longer. That's up to you and your local experts. But if I don't get it in by Labor Day, it may not do a whole lot for me. So we like to be in that middle of August on. So we're trying to follow wheat with rye into soybeans, and the rye is just a cover crop. Then the thing we do with that is, you don't have to plant the whole quarter. Like I got guys that'll just plant around the saline areas and a little further out in the wet spots. They'll leave the rest of the field alone. Especially the hilltops that tend to dry out, they won't plant those. You plant soybeans, and you plant soybeans wherever you want to. Wherever it's too wet or whatever you don't want to get in there, you leave the rye go. You can hay it, you can combine it for your own cover crop seed, whatever.
When you terminate it, then you do it by your moisture in the ground, or is there a certain time?
So when do I terminate the cereal rye? Yeah, the moisture in the ground. It takes about 7 to 10 days for the rye to die. So I'm out there checking those fields. When I think it's gonna be about 2 weeks before we plant, I call the sprayer guy. And we'll put the full dinger on. We'll go in, round up in our pre-emerge for our soybeans. And we'll do that because the sulfentrazone can lay there for a long period of time. Zidua can lay there for a long period of time. So your Authority Supreme, your Authority Edge can be just fine. We've been doing it with Authority Elite. The Dual doesn't like to lay there, but it's been working. That kind of thing.
Any issue with that, like burning seeds when they're coming up?
Any issue with burning the beans? Yeah, sulfentrazone's going to burn the beans a little bit. It happens. It's more so when we get rain just at the right time. But when I have that rye, I get less splash. So I get way less injury than I do on bare fields. Or soybean on soybean with no rye. Way less injury. But we'll still see some injury. You had a question?
Does it lead to any more wild rye?
Does it lead to more wild rye? Yes. Yeah. Not wild rye, but volunteer rye. We have volunteer rye all over. So this is, the rotation has to be right behind wheat, a year of soybeans, a year of corn, 2 years to kill the rye, make sure it's dead. Then we can go back to wheat, and we still might have a few snakes in there, but it usually is not enough to cause us any discounts or any problems. They have been taking a fair amount of rye from us in the wheat. More than I would expected them to. But I'm not saying you can count on that, but it hasn't been that bad. But we have to plan for that. Another question.
Any reason you're following wheat stubble with beans instead of corn?
Any reason I'm following wheat stubble with beans instead of corn? Just for the rye is one of the main things. So we can get that rye in ahead of it because it's one of my weed control options. Now granted, this is only a few of my fields. This isn't the majority of them. Okay, so a lot of my guys are out of wheat. They're out of wheat. They don't even grow it anymore. Where we have bad weed pressure, we're throwing wheat in there because we're planting a different crop, we're planting early, we're using different herbicides, we're different harvest time. We're changing a lot of the games on the weeds. It's not just that it's wheat. It's when we plant, when it's got canopy, when we harvest, when we go back in there to manage it. So that's what we're using as a specific tool to take on water hemp for sure and kochia for sure. That's one of the main ones. The other reason there's a lot of soybeans behind wheat is the guys that don't have a lot of corn. And a few guys that are toying with corn, they're at that 300-400 acre, and they're not really corn growers yet. They don't have the dryer and the trucks and all that fun stuff. So about that's what they can afford is 400 acres. Yeah, corn typically follows soybeans in my area because we're using that crop credit.
Are oats in your rotation?
Do I have oats in the rotation? On a few farms, yes. I really do like oats other than the rust is just kicking my tail. And I can't stay ahead of it. I do like oats. Again, very saline tolerant. As good or better than barley. Much better yields. Really, really good canopy. Probably some of the best canopy throughout the season that I have in any crop for weed suppression. But just not a lot of market. And we either end up, getting a really good contract or selling it for dog food. That's kind of where we're at. I don't know how much time I got left. I might be done. That's 3:05. I'm over time. Or I have 3:30. 3:30.
You don't have anything about soil biology up there. I just wonder your thoughts. There seems to be a tendency to commercialize beneficial soil biology and to sell it.
We want to know my thoughts? So, okay, you asked. Okay, so the question is, the soil biology, I'm not talking about soil biology specifically. What are my thoughts on commercializing of soil biology? Bug in a jug. Is that fair paraphrase?
Yep.
Okay, what are my thoughts? I am a build it and they will come kind of guy. Okay. Do those biology work? Sure they work. But they're already there in a lot of cases. And the other thing is if you have aggregates, that's where they want to live. Think about a soil aggregate as a city. There's a downtown, the metropolitan area. There's a very different structure to the inside of that aggregate than there is in the urban, suburban area, the outskirts of town. Okay, there's different oxygen, there's different water. It's further outside of that aggregate, okay? Then you get to the outside, you get to the rural area, the surface of that aggregate. Different people live in different places, right? I could never live downtown Minneapolis, dude. That's no way. Can't do it. I love nowhere, North Dakota. That's where I want to be. Okay? Those are my prescriptions. That's what I need in order to survive. In those aggregates, you have several different types of areas for them to live. If you have soil aggregation and you have food, so if you have a house, you have a home for them, if you have food for them, you have water for them, they'll be there. That's what we've seen. Even in saline soil. So the research that Kaylee Gash did before she left for us, Alaska, she took saline soils, put them in a lab, like the dead soils that don't even have any smell or nothing, no structure, no nothing, leached the tar out of them, leached the salts, the fertilizer out of them, got it all cleaned up, grew them in pots, measured the soil biology, started to rebound within a few months. There was a lot of stuff there that was coming back. And this is in a lab where they're not really coming from anywhere else. I'm not convinced on the bug in a jug, period. I think the best thing you need to do is take care of your soil first. Make sure you have aggregates. Make sure you're not losing it to erosion. Make sure you're not losing your soil to salinity. Make sure you're not losing it to water erosion, wind erosion, that type of stuff. Get good structure so that it can infiltrate and absorb water and keep and hold water. And I think the biology will come along with it. And this idea that they can sell the same bug in Arkansas and California and North Dakota makes me wonder. Makes me wonder a lot. Do you guys want to live in those other states? There's a reason why you deal with this shit outside right now. Yeah? Okay, so that's part of it. The other thing to me is like, think about it in pheasants. Why do I come here to hunt pheasants? Why don't I hunt pheasants in North Dakota? There's some there. It's a different environment. It's just a little bit too cold. And we don't have enough habitat for them. They're there, but they're struggling. Give them habitat and give them food and water and they'll be fine. Those are my theories. I'm not saying that these bugs in the jugs don't work. I think they went to the soil, they found them, they put them in a jug and they're trying to sell them. I think you already got them. And I think if you don't have them, you got shitty soil and you need to fix that first. Because if I just went in my backyard and released 1,000 pheasants, guess what? I'd have a lot of happy coyotes. That's where I'm at. I'm not saying don't buy them. I'm not saying they don't work. I'm saying I don't think it's cart for the horse thing. That's my personal opinion. You asked a lot of questions already. Somebody else.
Are you seeing dropping pHs and what are you doing to solve it?
Are we seeing dropping pHs? Yes, definitely we're seeing dropping pHs. The other thing I've seen, and unfortunately, and to my dismay, I've seen guys doing more tillage than they had in the past. Not on full-on conventional till, but a lot of knifing in phosphorus and P and K and going 3-4 inches down. Am I totally against it? If your soil's moving away, yeah, I'm against it. You're screwing up your aggregates, you're screwing up a lot of stuff. Our pHs are going down because we're using a lot of nitrogen. And we're leaching that stuff out. My pHs are in the 6 to 6.2 at the lowest right now. Once in a while I'll have one tip into 5.8, but it's in a small zone. So what I'm doing to monitor my pHs is if I pick up an average pH of 6.2 or less in a field, I'm zone sampling. Okay? Hopefully, 2 out of my 3 zones or 3 out of my 4 zones are 7s or better or 6.8 or better. I can eliminate those as low pH problem sites. Then I'll come back and more intensively sample that zone that's the low one. Say I got a zone that comes in at 5.9 or 6.0. I want to sample that at a much higher density. You could grid it at 4.5 acres, you could grid it at 2 acres, you could just take several different composite samples within that, try to see where you're at. Because that's what I want to do is like, where do I need lime and how much? But only where do I need lime and how much? So then hopefully I can treat those areas. We haven't treated it yet, just like you guys were a long way from lime. But I like that. pH has a solution. And it works. Liming works. Salinity, I got some solutions, but they're really difficult.
Pushing your growers to use higher rates on carriers with chemicals?
Oh yeah. Am I pushing my growers to use higher water volumes? That what you asked? Yes. 15 is the new 5. 20 is where I start. And if you were looking at Liberty, I start at 25 gallons per acre. Water works, especially with Liberty. 15 is my minimum. Now, they're cheating me down about 2.5 to 5 gallons on most of those. But I can see it every time they do it. I can literally see it in the control every time they do it. So the answer is when you trade your sprayer, get one with a big tank. And I've talked to guys about, you pull a nurse tank behind the planter, why don't you pull one behind the sprayer? Everybody laughs at me. I don't drive this thing, so I don't get it. Maybe there's a really good reason not to do that. But the pain in the ass is the 46 acres per load, right? That's what guys get mad at me about. Well, do you want to spray them once, twice, or 3 times? And do you want weeds dead or not dead? That's the question. It's not about, can I get by with lower water rates? Sure, you can get by with lower water rates if you can tolerate lower weed control and lower yields. You asked that, you know the answer.
You say Arizona doesn't work up there anymore?
Paraquat, it kills some weeds. We have kosher resistance and we have mare's tail resistance to paraquat. And it's bad weather, it's iffy anyway. I don't count on on herbicides to be my main weed control. There's a support system. My main weed control is my crop rotation. I don't mean corn and soybeans because that's not a rotation. It's when you look at corn and soybeans, you plant them at the same time, the canopy at the same time, you spray them at the same time, you harvest them at the same time. How the hell is that a rotation? Cool season, warm season, broadleaves, grasses, mix it up. And if you don't want to do that, use cover crops to fill the gaps. That's what we're doing in our spring wheat and our barley. And we're flying rye into corn, not very successfully. But we're also broadcasting rye with our top dress nitrogen application. So when we're coming in June, 16 to 24 inches tall, we're putting 50 pounds of rye in the back end of the spreader, and we're putting on 50 pounds of AMS and 50 pounds of urea at the same time. Where the rye doesn't grow, the corn is awesome, and I'm thrilled about that. Where the rye does grow, the corn sucks, and there's not as much water hemp, and I'm thrilled about that. Growing 2 cash crops at the same time. Do you want me to keep going with that? Dead silence. This is fleas, yeah, this is flax and peas. We did this because we're tired of the peas being flat on the ground and you can't get them up other than 1 mile an hour, one direction. The flax is twining on the peas, holding them back. You still have sulfentrazone as a herbicide. You still have clethodim as a herbicide. You still have several herbicides in this. Everything's leaning over because the peas are pulling on the flax. The flax is trying to help hold it up. It's pretty. The blue is cool. Pods are maturing here. Both of them, the pods are maturing. And this is what happened at the end of the year. Now, we didn't get major holding of the peas up, but they were 6 to 8 inches off the ground versus 2 inches off the ground. That was pretty cool. This is the line. You can see the flax in there and not in the other one. It was a lot easier to combine, other than the flax didn't die. That shit won't die. It doesn't know when to give up. Okay? So, growers not doing this again because it was a pain in the tuchus to come back and try to combine this. We need to find a shorter season flax. And this is the shortest season one I could find. We did try to desiccate it. Flax is kind of a honey badger there, doesn't really care. You can desiccate it and it comes back when it rains again. What was really cool about this, he was able to separate it. Most of the bolls were crushed, so they weren't a problem. He did have some screenings. He'd never grown flax before. This was just to have the peas. So he had, what did he have? He figured he got 5 bushel more peas just from the harvesting effect. Yeah, and he had 10 bushels of flax. And he got lucky, the elevator down the road took the 10 bushels of flax for $11 a bushel. Extra $100, and he got more peas.
Use a stripper head.
He did not use a stripper head. He does have one, but he did not use that. He used the platform head on this. So then I had a grower call me one day, spring. He's like, well, we've been planting cover crops. He had a bunch of radish seed left in the drill. He's like, can I just plant that in the wheat? I'm like, you can do whatever you want to do. You're a grower. He says, but will it grow? I said, sure, it'll grow. He says, can we keep it? There's the question, right? Can we keep it in there? Well, radish is brassica. And yeah, the main weed I'm going after is kochia, and I'm using wide match at this time. And so that doesn't kill mustard. So it doesn't kill brassicas. I said, I think it'll live. So he had 8 acres, he planted it. And here's the wheat and the radish growing together in the rows all through the summer. Wheat starts taking off. There's my dead kochia. And I'm thrilled about it because it worked. He sprayed a little later than I wanted him to. Didn't even whiff the radish. Laughed at it. Now, I'm going to tell you this is an off-label application, which also makes it illegal. So therefore, the radish was cover crop seed for us only, not for sale. That's the official response. This is what that field looked like on the 15th of June. Now, it's not even. It's through the drill. It was just what was laying in the bottom. This was full of butterflies, cabbage loopers. It's pretty cool. Didn't hurt nothing. Like if the bug ain't hurting you, leave it the hell alone. It's probably helping you. And then here's the major disaster. We tried 60-inch corn. Anybody try that 60-inch corn when it was a thing? Good. Oh, Danny, don't tell anybody. We tried it. This is the 2 acres or 20 acres, right? We knew this going in, like, this is a risk. Sounds really cool. We can get better cover crops. We could get forage to grow with it. We can still get the same corn yield. Bullshit. So here's our 60-inch rows. And then we came back in and planted. We did this a couple different ways. This is with the drill. Now we kept the populations the same, so 30,000 corn plants. This is where the drill ran them over. They don't really care early season as long as you don't cut them off and kill them. You know, not a whole lot of cover crops. Some places it grew. It started looking okay. Yeah, it's looking okay. Mostly grasses. Didn't get a whole lot of broadleaves as we left some herbicide options in here. Corn looked okay, wasn't good. It's kind of cool. I mean, what we were doing. This is all by hand. We were filling the planter boxes by hand to do some of this stuff so we could do that. This is in a test plot we had. We came back and thinned the corn plants in some other places by hand. We had some soybeans in one. We thought, well, maybe we could do soybeans in the middle and double down on it. And looks cool from the air. Looks cool from the air. There's a guy who did one strip just for shits and giggles. Moral of the story, nobody does this anymore. We lost between 20 and 50 bushels an acre on the corn. But it was 2 acres, so it was no big deal. But we're not going to do it anymore. This gets into a whole other thing. You guys have iron chlorosis out here with soybeans? No, then you don't care. Okay. They have low pH. And they don't have a lot of water problems. They probably don't have a lot of excess nitrogen either. Other questions? Go ahead.
I'm intrigued about your drought.
My drought? It's nothing like yours, Dan.
We've never seen it. I just have to see what it's about.
You haven't seen, that's a new section, yeah, you're right. I think that's towards the front. This is my drought section. This is June, spring wheat. Looks pretty rough. Potassium deficient, short. It's mostly water deficient. I mean, that's the main thing. But yeah, you could always say there's potassium deficiency. There's all kinds of stuff. This is peas, I think. Looks like it. There was wheat in July. That's a 12-inch little shovel that I carry with me everywhere I go. Here's the corn in July. Daniel's shorter than I am. He's about 5'6", 5'7". He's tasseled out. You see, I got a whole hell of a lot of nothing what I want to fix there. I don't have a lot of good solutions for drought, folks. The main thing is take care of your soil. Try to get it to store more water, and you're going to be better off. I'm going to go back to those aggregates again. Get soil aggregates if you get anything, and how do you get them less disturbance is the main thing. Adding roots is another good thing. Keeping things growing is another good thing. That makes a big difference. Outside of that, I would say for drought, if you know what's coming, plant drought-tolerant crops, right? If you're in a place that's prone to drought, you're planting sunflowers. You're maybe planting small grains. You're planting lentils. You're planting chickpeas. Play with what you got to play with. If you know you're going to have droughty stuff, don't plant corn all the time. If you know you're going to be dry late, like I have fields, I don't plant soybeans in them. We use field peas in that rotation. We plant them early. They use water early. They're dead early. They're off early when we're dry. Really good way to burn up a combine. It's kind of the risks you take. What do I think of fall herbicides? Yeah, what weeds you targeting? First thing. Okay, so that's the thing. And yeah, I do a lot of fall valor. One of the things I like about I told you herbicides are dead, don't forget that, but they still work on some weeds, okay? So the bigger the rate, the smaller the weed, the better your chances. Compute? Okay, cool. Vast majority of our herbicides are broken down by microbes. Soil microbes break down a lot of our herbicides. Soil microbes are much less active when it's cold, yeah? So applying later in the fall, your herbicide has a lot more hang time than it does any other time of the year because the microbes are not breaking it down. So I use a fair amount of fall Valor. We tend to pair it with 2,4-D, but I'm targeting bad kochia. I'm targeting bad mare's tail. I'm not targeting water hemp with this mix. That's not a good plan. It doesn't fit. I'm not targeting common ragweed with this mix. Not a good plan. It doesn't fit. Okay? We're using a little bit heavier rates of Valor, kind of in that 3-ounce range where I'm at, and a pint to pint and a half of 2,4-D. And I will spray till the cows come home in the fall. Like if you got icicles hanging off your booms, you're probably doing it right. And every time I get my growers to do this, they cuss me out because the combine's sitting outside because the sprayer's got to get run in. And they're like, I'm done with this. I'm not spraying in this shit weather anymore. I'm going to blow a pump. I'm like, cool. And he quits midfield, wherever the tank runs out, right? Hauls ass home, puts it in, thaws it out, puts all the RV antifreeze in it, and calls me up and chews me out every year. Then every spring, I tell him where he quit. Because it's obvious, it's the nose on my face where he stopped spraying. It's without a doubt, we can see where the kochia and the mare's tail are bad. Every time. So he does it again next year, rinse, repeat. We do this again and again. It's the same thing.
We need granular formulation.
Dr. Beck says we need a granular formulation. I wouldn't disagree. It would last a lot longer. We wouldn't get the degradation until next spring.
We
Would
have to
it?
worry about the spray.
Well, then you could spread it too.
We did a bunch of stuff with impregnating sand with residual herbicide.
How come you didn't release that? I would use the hell out of that.
Well, that's great.
Impregnated sand with residual herbicide. Sounds awesome.
It is. Really easy to do, but the co-op don't want to do it. Nobody wants to label it.
Co-ops don't want to do it. I'm not surprised that nobody wants to label it. Definitely not surprised because rates get to be a nightmare when you're broadcasting. Probably not with sand so much.
No, it's, what we were doing is using impregnating floater. So you impregnated
As on the go.
chemical on the go, so the amount of sand didn't make any difference. You were getting the chemical right because of the impregnating.
There you go. I got co-ops that won't use their VRT machine because the guy can't figure out how to put the map in it. You laugh because you got co-ops like that too. It's part of the deal. The guy running the machine doesn't know how to put the map in. And we lost thousands of dollars because of it. Last questions? For my own part, I think this worked well for me. I need to fix my links and then it will be better. I thank you for your attention. And let me get to an ending slide out of the 150 that I got in here. Just so you can see my ugly mug one more time. I used to be really active on Twitter. I'm not as active on Twitter anymore because there's a lot of trolls and I'm kind of tired of it. I'm taking a break. I don't need to talk to people who are anti, who are negative. When I can come to a meeting like this, where I can talk to really good farmers who actually farm, who are actually doing the work, who are interested in the things that I have to say, and can give me things that I can learn from. I'm still on Twitter. If you want to follow me, there's some good stuff. I might come back to it later. But right now, screw the trolls. That's where I'm at. Thank you for your time. Hopefully it was good.